Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. I am Stephanie Walker, Acting Director in the Office of Challenge Programs, and I welcome you to this first ever informational webinar for new recipients of Infrastructure and Capacity Building Challenge Grants. Congratulations on your successful applications. Your institution is one of 30 whose project was approved for funding. This is out of 112 submissions for an overall success rate of about 27%. For those of you who are familiar with NEH and its structure, let me say briefly that after a hiatus of several years, the Office of Challenge Programs has been reinstated and rebuilt. We have a strong, dedicated staff ready to serve your needs, answer questions, and resolve any issues with your grants that may arise. And please don't be shy in reaching out to us. I will let each of the staff here at the webinar introduce themselves, and then we will start the webinar touching on several practical topics regarding your NEH award and end with a period for questions from you. The webinar will be recorded and will be available to review or share with colleagues.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I am Tatiana Ausema, a Senior Program Officer in the Office of Challenge Programs, and we're so glad that many of you were able to join us today. We're all really looking forward to working with each of you over the coming months. As Stephanie noted, the Office of Challenge Programs has recently undergone some staffing and organizational changes. So we'd like to take a moment to introduce our program staff, followed by our colleagues in the Office of Grants Management. So again, I am Tatiana Ausema. I'm a Senior Program Officer in the Office of Challenge Programs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Fox, also in the Office of Challenge Programs. Welcome to our webinar. I look forward to working with many of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacob Lusk. I'm a Program Analyst with the Office of Challenge Programs, and welcome.
Great. Thanks, everyone. We're also joined by some colleagues from our Office of Grants Management, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Pam Thompson, Grant Administrator for Challenge Grants with the NEH Office of Grant Management.
And good afternoon. I'm Ann Peason, NEH's Historic Preservation and Environmental Officer with the Office of Grant Management.
And we're just a small part of the team at NEH that works together to help you administer your grant. And we're truly here to help, and we hope that you feel comfortable contacting us throughout the period of your project. Today's webinar is intended to provide a basic orientation to your challenge grant, including what to expect when you receive your formal offer letter, meeting the terms and conditions in your offer letter, beginning fundraising and certifying matches, starting your project, and communicating with NEH. A few housekeeping items before you get started. As you can see, Microsoft Teams doesn't allow for participants to use audio or video. So if you have any questions or technical issues that come up during the presentation, please send us a note using the question box. We'll be monitoring questions as they come in, and we'll have a period of question and answers after the webinar concludes. When asking a question, please include your name and institution so that we can follow up with you if necessary. And during the question and answer session, we'll try to focus on general questions that might pertain to multiple projects. If you have questions about your specific project, please reach out via email to set up a phone or video call with us, or you can leave a note in the question box to have us follow up with you. Closed captioning is available for this presentation by clicking on the CC button in your lower right-hand corner. And there will be a recording available in a few days that will also have closed captioning for the webinar. Finally, I should note that since this is intended to be a general overview, there may be some elements that do not apply to your particular project, and this may be especially true for the digital infrastructure projects. But on the other hand, you may discover that there was a part of the webinar that you need to rewatch or share with a colleague. So please do use the recorded webinar to do that. You can email us at challenge@neh.gov for a secure link. If you've worked with the federal partner before, you know that we love acronyms and shorthand. And I believe that Jacob just emailed a copy of our glossary for challenge grants to everyone right before this webinar. And if you didn't get a copy, you can email us and we'll make sure you get one. We'll try to define terms as we go along. So having the glossary handy is not a requirement, but it might help demystify some of the terms and definitions that are referenced today. If it's ever unclear or you have a question, again, use the question box and we'll try to respond to clarify. The glossary also includes a link to the Administration of Challenge Grants manual located on the NEH website, as well as NEH's general terms and conditions. They can be found under Manage Your Award, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see my cursor, but if you can, it's kind of midway through this page. And this section of the NEH website also contains helpful links to other policy documents and NEH guidance, such as reporting requirements, certification forms, and publicity guidance. Our website will always have the most up-to-date versions of these forms and documents, so while the glossary is a handy reference, please remember to consult back to the website for specific guidance. As Stephanie mentioned, this is the 5th cycle of infrastructure and capacity building challenge grants offered since 2017. Your project is one of 30 recommended in this cycle for funding, and you join a distinguished group of nearly 100 infrastructure and capacity building grantees that are in various phases of their challenge grant. The program is a signature initiative of NEH's chairman, John Parrish-Petey, and is intended to promote fundraising for high-impact, long-lasting initiatives that support humanity's efforts nationwide. Supported activities have included the restoration of Christ Church in Philadelphia, development of a digital asset management system, and the digital conversion of 83,000 audiovisual recordings in the WGBH Media Library and Archives, design and construction of the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., and installation of a new fire suppression, interior climate control, and other building systems in the historic Homestake Opera House in Leeds, South Dakota. A successful challenge project has a number of phases and milestones along the way. You've already completed some of these steps, pre-planning, submitting an application, and making it through review. Right now, you're waiting for your formal offer letter from NEH. This is the document that will lay out the terms and conditions of your award. This will arrive via email and will include terms and conditions required for you to receive an award from NEH. The offer letter and next steps will be the main focus of today's webinar. Please know that we want your project to succeed, and in order to do that, it's important to know the roles and responsibilities of both NEH staff and your internal project team. Each project has an assigned program officer who will be your point of contact for the programmatic objectives on your project. Through your reports, phone calls, and emails, program officers will monitor the implementation of your project and ensure that you have the resources and coordination to address the conditions of the award. Program officers are available to answer programmatic questions such as how to address changes in a schedule or work plan, and will review your performance reports each year. Each project also has an assigned grant administrator in NEH's Office of Grants Management. And if your project involves construction, renovation, or ground disturbance, you'll work with our Federal Preservation and Environmental Officer. I'm going to ask both of them to briefly introduce themselves again and describe their role in your project. Pam?
Thank you, Tatiana. Hi again. I am Pam Thompson, your NEH grant administrator for all challenge projects. I am your point of contact on financial and grant management monitoring and technical assistance. And I am responsible for issuing your offer letter, certifying gifts, and approving changes such as revised budget, changes in project director, adjustments to project scopes, and award extensions.
And hello again. I'm Ann Peason, the Federal Preservation and Environmental Officer for NEH. I'm your point of contact for all federally mandated reviews, such as compliance with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, referred to as Section 106, and the National Environmental Policy Act, referred to as NEPA. I also provide technical assistance on construction and property requirements, such as Davis-Bacon, procurement, bonding, and federal interest. Next.
NEH requires challenge grant recipients, that's you, to identify two key participants, the project director and the institutional grant administrator. Many of you are probably your institutional project director. The project director is the person responsible for the programmatic aspects and day-to-day management of the project. The project director will submit performance reports to NEH. The institutional grant administrator, or IGA, is responsible for the administration of the NEH award, which includes monitoring the project budget and ensuring compliance with the terms and conditions. The IGA is responsible for submitting certified gifts and financial reports to NEH. This person may be in an office of sponsored projects, your organization's CFO, or a board member with fiduciary responsibility. Both the project director and institutional grant administrator will be required to access NEH's electronic grant management system, called EGMS Reach, to review and submit documents, respond to messages, and manage the award. This online portal is where you will view your offer materials, submit reports and gift certifications, and communicate with NEH staff. This is a screenshot of what the login for EGMS Reach will look like. The account will become active as soon as your offer letter and associated documents are ready. Once active, it's essential that you route all of your communications and documents through the Reach Messenger system. Messages will go to the entire NEH team working with your project and will automatically update if our staff change. Messages and documents are also automatically entered into your official award file. All communications do need to come from the project director or the institutional grant administrator, and you may not delegate this role to another staff member or share login information without NEH approval. So please be sure that both the people filling the project director and institutional grant administrator are able to access and continue to have access to this Reach portal. When you receive notification that your offer is waiting in EGMS Reach, please log in to view the files and familiarize yourself with the portal, message system, and tabs. I'm going to turn our webinar now over to Pam Thompson, who will describe what to expect within your offer letter.
Thank you. Hi again. The first document that will be visible in EGMS Reach is your offer of support. An offer is followed by an award. When the conditions of the offer letter are met, when you receive offer, please do the following. It is very important to read your offer letter and the documents referenced in it. NEH General Terms and Conditions, administration of NEH Challenge Infrastructure and Capacity Building Grant, and 2 CFR 200 provide information about how to manage your award access funds, record keeping and reporting requirements, gift eligibility, actions requiring prior approval for NEH, and more. Many of these documents are also available on NEH website if you want to review prior to receiving the offer letter. Two things need to occur to make the offer an award. First, certification of gifts, and second, meet the conditions of the offer letter. The award funds will be committed by the Office of Grant Management through a notice of action. Once an award is issued, you will be able to begin to draw down funds as you incur project costs. Next. Your offer letter will include a period of performance, which is the time period in which you are performing the activities and incurring costs associated with the award. and a certification schedule which will list NEH offer of funds, the required match, and the total budget for each year of your project. The period of performance and the funding period are separate but overlapping timelines. Please review all the dates and ensure that they are aligned with your proposed work plan and internal timelines that you have for your project. If they do not align, or if your project work plan has changed since the application was submitted to NEH, please let us know. For this round of challenge grants, the period of performance cannot start earlier than May 1st, 2021. Your work plan, fundraising schedule, and period of performance should all align and reference the time necessary to complete all activities proposed in your application. Next. On a previous slide, I mentioned that two things need to occur to make an offer and an award and allow you to draw down funds. The first is that you must begin to fundraise and certify gifts to meet the NEH matching requirements. The fundraising period for this cycle of challenge grants began on December 15, 2019, which was 5 months prior to the application deadline, and will continue through July 31st within the final year of your period of performance. Many of you have certified gifts and are already fundraising, which is great. For most projects, you will see that your first gift certification is due by July 31st, 2021. As I mentioned previously, when you receive your offer, please review the funding schedule in ETMS REACH, which shows your annual certification requirement. The annual deadline for certification is July 31st, but please certify gifts as soon as you have them, even if they exceed your annual requirements. NEH may be able to release federal matching funds ahead of schedule. If you are unable to meet your annual deadline of July 31st for gift certification, it is important to notify NEH early. Otherwise, that annual amount may be forfeited and your total award amount may be reduced accordingly. Next. The gift certification form can be found on the program resources page for infrastructure and capacity building challenge grants, or under organization on the Manage Your Grant portion of NEH website. For gifts over $5,000, please submit donor documentation along with certification form. Gifts under $5,000 do not require donor documentation. Completed certification forms should be uploaded in ETMS REACH. Once received, NEH staff will review to ensure all pledges and gifts are eligible and appropriate. Once approved, you will receive notification via ETMS REACH that certified funds are available. Next.
Thanks. This is Tatiana again. And so in addition to certifying gifts, so certifying gifts is the first condition that all successful challenge grant recipients need to do to turn their offer into an award. The second condition, the second thing that has to happen in order to allow drawdown of funds is that all of the conditions of the offer must be met. So you have to certify gifts and meet the conditions. Each challenge project is unique, and as a result, each offer letter has different terms and conditions. NEH staff will work with each of you individually to submit required materials. However, we wanted to offer a general overview of the types of conditions that you're likely to encounter, especially as it relates to projects proposing any type of construction or ground disturbing activities. We want to support you in quickly meeting these conditions so that you're able to implement your projects without delays and have funds released as soon as you certify your gifts. Pam Thompson and Ann Peason will describe common conditions that you may see in your offer letter.
Thanks again, Tatiana. The most common condition on the offer letter is a request for a revised budget. This may be due to a calculation error in the application, the need for additional information about a particular budget line, or a total project cost that is above or below the amount requested. For the purpose of your offer and award budget, there is no distinguish between federal matching funds and certified non-federal gifts. For example, if your NEH offer is $500,000 and you are required to raise $3 for every $1 of NEH funds, your budget should reflect exactly $2 million of eligible expenses. All items must be eligible and appropriate and within the scope of the project as described in your application. If any items of your budget were ineligible, or if the total cost is above or below the amount of NEH funding plus certified non-federal gifts, a revised budget will be required. Another common reason for a revised budget is that the SF 424C budget information for construction programs or the budget justification required additional explanation. NEH may ask for further breakdown of particular line items such as staff salaries, or ask for the cost basis used to calculate certain expenses such as square foot per item, etc. If you have existing information that provides this, we are more than happy to review it before asking for additional information. We know that for many of you, NEH funding and the certified gifts account for a small portion of the overall project cost. If you have any questions or concerns related to your project or fundraising, please reach out to us directly. Next.
Another common condition included in the offer letter relates to NEH's requirement to comply with Section 106 and NEPA. NEH is required by federal law to review grant and cooperative agreement applications involving work with construction, renovation, repair, rehabilitation, or ground or visual disturbances under Section 106 and NEPA. Your offer letter will contain Section 106 and NEPA terms if they are applicable. Recipients cannot begin any physical work on projects, including site clearance, and NEH cannot release any federal funds until we complete the Section 106 and NEPA reviews. Pre-construction work such as planning, design, permitting, and compliance with Section 106 and NEPA can be done. Next. Section 106 and its implementing regulations requires NEH to consider whether a federally funded project, known as an undertaking, will have an effect on historic properties, and if the effect will be adverse. NEH delegates the initiation of Section 106 to recipients. All projects that include any of the listed activities will require completion of a Section 106 review prior to issuing an award. We will schedule a phone or video call with your team to discuss the circumstances of your particular project and ensure that you have the information required to begin the review with your state historic preservation officer. Next. NEPA and its implementing regulations requires NEH to consider potential effects of a federally funded project on the natural and human environment prior to the expenditure of NEH funds. While the vast majority of NEH projects will not require additional review under NEPA, projects that have a significant federal contribution, extraordinary circumstances, or do not fall within NEH's categorical exclusions may require preparation of a concise environmental assessment. So keep in mind that NEH is not physically on site and does not have the intimate details of your project. Therefore, we need your help completing Section 106 and NEPA reviews. The information and cooperation that you provide can make this process go easier and more quickly. Recipients may use project funds to complete Section 106 and NEPA compliance. And if you do not have staff for this, you may hire a consultant. Again, NEPA and Section 106 must be completed by NEH prior to initiating ground disturbance, construction, and renovation work. Planning, pre-construction design, grant administration, and preparing grant-related documentation such as Section 106 and NEPA are allowable. A Section 106 and NEPA Technical Assistance webinar is available on the NEH website at the address shown on your screen. Next. And the final common condition listed in the offer letter pertains to federal interest. When a recipient uses NEH funds to purchase land or building, or to construct or renovate a facility, it creates what is called a federal interest. Federal interest is a property right which secures the right of the federal awarding agency, NEH, to recover its funding in the event that the property is no longer used for humanities purposes within the federal interest period. The period of federal interest extends to 5 years from the period of performance end date. During the period of federal interest, all recipients with projects involving property acquisition, construction, or renovation are required to submit an annual real property status report in eGMS Reach. Recipients receiving federal funding greater than $500,000 are also required to attach a lien to the property called a Notice of Federal Interest, or NFI. The NFI will expire 5 years from the NEH award period of performance end date. Please refer to the administration of NEH Challenge Infrastructure and Capacity Building Grants for further information on federal interest. Next. Your offer letter will also reference several other requirements that apply to federally funded construction and renovation projects. It is your responsibility as a grant recipient to familiarize yourself with the requirements and keep associated records. These requirements are either directly referenced in your offer letter or incorporated by reference to CFR 200, and again, apply to construction and renovation contracting. Ensure that your construction and renovation contracts comply with the requirements in 2 CFR 200-4 General Procurement Standards, which includes documenting procurement procedures, maintaining contract oversight, avoiding conflicts of interest, and record keeping. Buy and hire American, which is strongly encouraged. Davis-Bacon, which requires that laborers and mechanics employed by contractors or subcontractors on endowment-supported construction projects shall receive prevailing wages as determined by the Secretary of Labor, and that is for work over $2,000. And then fair and open competition, including when informal procurement and formal procurement, sealed and open bidding, and non-competitive procurement may occur. Next.
Thank you. So, as Pam mentioned, every offer letter will be unique. You may see 1, 2, all, or none of these terms and conditions, depending on the scope of the activities proposed in your application. Digital infrastructure projects, for example, will not include conditions related to historic preservation, and interior-only renovations are less likely to trigger an environmental review. We've already stressed the importance of using eGMS Reach to communicate to ensure that all the pertinent staff members can see your questions and documents. While we want to be kept up to date on any changes you think are important, I want to emphasize that there are a few key situations that require prior approval that you should be sure to let us know about as soon as possible. These include any anticipated changes to the budget, scope of the project, key personnel, or significant changes to your timeline for fundraising or work plan that might result in an extension or a modified certification schedule. We want to work with you to avoid any pitfalls, but the best way to do that is with regular communication. And we know that construction projects can be complicated and that they have unexpected changes and delays. So we're ready to work with you when that happens, but you need to let us know early so that we can incorporate that into the project. So this is a lot to take in, but don't panic. This is just the first step in getting started on your project. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about, well, what do you do next? So first, don't forget that you can start fundraising right away. If you have gifts on hand to certify, be sure they were raised after December 15th, 2019, and prepare the gift certification form. The Administration of Challenge Grants document has additional information on eligible gifts. You can publicize your project. NEH Challenge is on Twitter. NEH is also on Twitter as an agency. So let us know and tag us if you're using social media, and there is guidance for social media on the NEH website. When your offer letter arrives, review it carefully and note the dates for the period of performance and schedule for certifying gifts. Check these dates against your work plan and any internal schedules your organization may have for a project. I would imagine that between when the application was prepared and today, things might have changed. So check your schedules and make sure that they line up. Make a note of any discrepancies. Schedule a call with your program officer and grant management to discuss any terms and conditions and begin the review process for Section 106 and/or NEPA if applicable. The project director and institutional grant administrator must participate in the call. However, other team members or outside consultants or contractors, such as an architect or a general contractor, may also join as appropriate. Most project directors find that it's helpful to wait until after the offer letter arrives before setting up a meeting. However, if you have immediate questions, please don't hesitate to contact NEH staff. And again, please contact us right away if your plans have changed substantially or if you have a change in project director or institutional grant administrator, because we need to have updated contacts in order for you to receive that offer letter. So, in closing, I hope that this information provides a bit of a roadmap to what is coming next for your infrastructure and capacity building challenge grant. Please know that each of us are here to help walk you through the offer and any associated conditions and to generally support your project as much as possible. We really do want to see you succeed, and we're looking forward to working with each one of you as you move forward. Thank you all for joining us today. My colleagues have been monitoring questions, and we'll spend a little bit of time answering any questions that you have. And so please continue to enter questions in the chat box. And don't forget to include your name and institution so we can respond directly if we run out of time or need to follow up. Also, please remember that a recording will be available. You can email us to get a copy of that. And now I'm going to turn it back over to our Acting Director, Stephanie Walker, to share any questions that have come in and to start that process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tatiana, and I think those attending will see that I published some answers to a couple of questions that have come in. I'm not going to go over those, but will rather try and answer the questions that have come in just now. I'll read them out loud and either answer them myself or call on one of my colleagues to give you the answer. So one question that I think is worth having all of you hear the answer to is the person who wrote, I know federal funding cannot match federal grants, but what about state of New Hampshire funding? We have a state grant for this project as well. I'm wondering if Tatiana or Pam could respond to this.
Sure. I'll start and then maybe Pam can follow up. In general, local and state funding is allowable as a match. There's always exceptions to the rule, but in general, yes, it is allowable. And I'm seeing Pam nodding, so that's a good sign.
Yes, that is correct.
Right.
But
right.
It's always best for us to see the agreement. That's very important to have to review it.
Right. It doesn't, I believe the state funding has to be specifically for this project, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Wayne is asking, what if funds are part of our building fund that we have been setting aside from earned income? Pam, again, I think Pam or Tatiana, could you speak to that?
I would have to review that. I don't like giving an answer to a question like that without really doing my homework. I want to be sure that I give the correct answer. That's a good question.
Right. I guess it would depend on where the earned income comes from.
That is correct. I really need to review that. Yeah, and work with our the Challenge Office of Grant Management Director. Yeah, that's a big one.
That's good. Any other questions that you can type into the Q&A tab if you see it there? Yes. So Julie writes, if we were awarded funds prior to December 15, 2019, which is the 5-month sort of limit before the application deadline, but have not received the funds yet, can this apply to our project if we receive the funds this year? I hate to keep on leaning on you, Pam, but I think this is another one of these certification of funding questions that would be best addressed by you. So when you say if you were awarded, you mean if a donor had pledged funds before December 15, but you haven't received them yet, can you apply them to the award?
It all depends on the donor date. Whatever date that's on the letter or the agreement, that's what we use. So in some cases, you could always go back to the donor and make an arrangement with them. But if the date is before December 15th, 2019, no, it's not allowed. We can't accept it.
Right. Let me see. Chelsea asks, typically how involved is the 106 National Historic Preservation process? Should we budget weeks or months for that to be completed? Well, I can say that's a loaded question because I guess it always depends on the project. But Anne, can you address that perhaps?
Certainly. As Stephanie indicated, it really does depend on the project. In a typical project where there's probably no adverse effect expected with the project, and you're able to prepare the documentation for submission to the State Historic Preservation Office, you'll have to plan the time in submitting the documentation that's required for Section 106, plus the SHPO has an additional 30 days by regulation to respond. So you could be looking at maybe 60 days. But if you have, a historic building with, additional construction, where there is a potential adverse effect, we could be looking at several months or longer. It really does depend on the project.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Here is another gift certification question. What about a federal-state partnership? For example, a grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission. I believe that could be a allowable or eligible gift source. But Pam, do did you want to or Tatiana, did you want to comment on that?
In most cases, yes, but I really like to look at the agreement because a lot of the details are in the agreement.
Quite right.
Yeah.
So that's actually good advice for all to keep in mind, to look carefully at the agreements you have with a potential donor or partner in funding.
And this is Tatiana. Taking a look at the Administration of Challenge Grants handbook can provide some guidance on what is eligible. To Pam's point, it always depends, and you have to see the details of an arrangement and where the funds are coming from. But in general, state partnerships, local partnerships generally are appropriate.
Stephanie, I think that, the ARC also has a federal connection, so I think it's important to emphasize that, federal funds cannot be from another grant cannot be used to match NEH's federal funds.
Right. Funds from another federal entity.
Yeah. It must be third party, non-federal. Yeah.
But it just goes to show again what Pam has said several times now, that it depends on the agreement and the source. Sometimes our Office of Grant Management has to, review the proposed, the circumstances of the proposed gift or gift fund. Ed writes, if an organization has communicated their willingness to make an in-kind contribution towards a total match, when could we first receive their contribution in order for it to count as match? So I believe if you haven't yet, communicated their willingness is, again, I'm now going to start to quote Pam, saying it depends when they communicated that and what way they communicated it. If it's a true pledge, then it cannot predate December 15, 2019. But if it's a less official communication and they're ready to make a contribution now, it could be at any point now, right?
That is correct. And again, I would like to see the details. Because in-kind is tricky, so that's something that we really take a close look at. Yeah.
Oh, and this is another question that I like from Lani Faith. If we are able to certify all matches required within the first year, do we still need to provide reports each year following during the performance period? You definitely still need to provide annual performance reports. Whether you have to provide annual financial reports, I'm going to punt it to Pam again.
If you yes, you will still need the annual financial because we would need to know when you request funds, and that will be reported in your annual financial document. And as for if you certify all the gifts in the first year, you will not be required to raise any more gifts. So you will not have that in your reporting requirement. So
right.
Your first year on your funding schedule will just have the first year, the full amount. So you won't have any certifications for the out years. So that will be the only thing that's not on the only report that's not on the reporting requirements is the gift certification. But everything else, yes, you would still have to report yearly.
Right, but I would think it's simplified to a certain extent.
That will be, that will be up to program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is Tatiana again. One thing that I think helps answer that a little bit is It's important to keep in mind that the timeline and the two threads of your project. So you have a period that you're raising funds, and then you have a period that you're expending funds and doing your project. So the annual financial reports are really focused on that back end. How are you spending the money? And it's less focused on how are you raising the money. So you do need to provide some financial reporting of how the funds are being spent, as well as your annual performance reports.
The annual performance reports being, what are you doing with the money?
Exactly.
Laura writes, some circumstances changed and we had to use a gift to purchase supplies originally in this project early. Can we still count that as a gift? Anyone?
I'm not sure, because if you already used the gift to pay for the supplies, I don't know. It all depends on how much is left over from the supplies. But again, I would really have to look at that. I need a little more information, a little more details.
Yeah, it may be if those supplies were part of the budget you submitted, right? One could probably adjust the budget accordingly.
Well,
it would depend on timing.
Yeah.
Allowable costs are incurred 90 days prior to the project period start date.
That's right.
So it has to fall within there as well.
But we will help you sort this out. Okay, everyone, or for anyone. We know it's complicated, and we'll do our best to help you with all of these questions.
And this is exactly why we wanted to start reaching out, so that each one of you can start thinking about this early, and start formulating these questions, and we'll be ready to answer them moving forward for sure.
Right. Let me go to Ashley's question. Hi, we stated we did not have any gifts specific to our project at the time of application. However, we did have undesignated funds pledged toward our campaign. Could these be counted toward our project if the donor would want as we move forward with their payments? And will our project... Sorry, I think I mangled the sentence somewhat.
So I think, Stephanie, it would probably it would depend on the scope of what was proposed, and how that fits in with their capital campaign. Depending on the project, sometimes the capital campaign is for a much larger project than what was proposed to NEH. So you're building a building from scratch, and it's a $80 million project, but NEH is only doing $2 million. It's the interior auditorium, and if the donor is pledging towards that interior auditorium, it may be. If they're pledging towards a different part of the capital campaign that's not part of that scope, it would be less likely that it would be allowable.
Right. Thanks. Rodney asks, do Davis-Bacon rules apply to museum staff on the project, or only to contractors hired for the project?
It is contractors. It's specifically your contractors, not your forced account laborers or other employees of your organization. So only the contractors.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Welcome. Any
other questions right now?
Stephanie, there was a question about COVID-related changes.
Yes, I answered that in a published question, but I might as well just summarize it here once more. Of course, we're all going to do our best to work with you to make adjustments, be it to the timeline or the budget, that take into consideration changes you've had to make because of the pandemic. But we still have to adhere to all the rules and regulations related to that govern federal grants. And I also wrote in this answer that at least currently we don't have any additional funding available, for example. That may change, but at least currently that's the case.
There is one question about a list of recommended environmental and historic preservation consultants, I'm assuming, by region. And I understand that some folks might want that information. NEH cannot recommend any particular company or individual. However, for Section 106 or state historic preservation offices, which we do provide links to the National Conference of SHPOs, which has a map to every state SHPO page. Those state historic preservation offices do provide links to consultants, and NEH can provide publicly available information on Section 106 consultants that are available to everybody. We just will not recommend any particular individual or company. So if you could send an email to challenge@neh.gov, we can share that information.
Definitely. Thanks, Anne. Anything else? I mean, this was a lot of information for all of you to digest. If that's it for now, rest assured that we are going to reach out to each and every one of you individually, and we'll go over, your specific case and your specific project with you. I want to thank you all for participating, and I want to thank in particular my colleagues, Tatiana Ausema, Pam Thompson, and Ann Peason for putting together this webinar and being available to give you all this important information. I want to remind you once more that the webinar will be recorded. This will include the slides, and we will make it available to you as soon as possible. We'll email you a link to on how to access it. I hope you've found this informational webinar useful, and we look forward to working with you on your wonderful, interesting, and diverse projects. Thank you, and goodbye.